Hey, what's up, everybody? Knuckles here on the Raw Knuckles podcast. And today, honestly, one of my favorite hockey people, guy I never played with, guy who certainly has been through a lot in his life. Feel like I know him. We've met on a few occasions, but never played together. Played in the NHL for 12 years. I don't want to make the same mistake as they did on that other podcast and said 10 years, but
Yeah.
12 years. And in Buffalo, Quebec, Washington, Clint Malarchuk.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Raw Knuckles. Hosted by Chris Nilan.
Nilan going ballistic. I love it. He's going to hit his own players. He's a madman. He's a freaking madman. Look at him going to town. That'll be a suspension. That'll be a fine. Bring them all out, Nilan, you freak.
It's going to be sick.
Clint, great having you, buddy.
Oh, it's good to be on here. Good to see you again. I think I've been on with you before a long time ago, and
Yeah.
it's always fun because I told you this off the air, and I'm going to blow a little smoke that the old hockey players, we don't really watch a lot of the hockey podcasts and things like that, but yours is one that I really do enjoy, and I'll take the time to watch it, and I
appreciate it.
I like it. Yeah, you bet.
I appreciate it. Let's get to this. And you grow up in Grand Prairie, Alberta. I've been there, by the way. Do you know? I have. We went there with the Habs, and we actually played some alumni games up through Alberta, all through Alberta, actually. And so I've been to your hometown.
Did you get any fights?
No, not at all. Not at all. It was friendly hockey.
Okay. And you know how to play. You know how to play friendly, huh?
Yes, I do.
Oh,
Yes, I
okay.
do, and I did. But
I'd like to see that.
You start in Grand Prairie hockey. When you're a kid growing up, and you're playing that position, you were always a goalie, right?
Yeah.
What your aspirations were? They one day I'm going to play in the NHL. How does that come about?
Well, actually, I didn't start as a goalie because my dad was a goalie. He played in the old Peace River Senior League up in Grand Prairie area.
Yeah.
And then my older brother, 7 years older, so that's significant age difference, was a goalie too. Yeah. So I wanted to be a goalie, of course. And they said, well, you got to learn to skate. You got to learn to skate. You can't just go into goal. So I started playing. So I played out and, learned to skate. And then I finally they said, okay, now you can play goal. I think I was about 9 years old. And I finally started playing. And, I don't think at that age you watch Hockey Night in Canada and, you dream of that and you think it's great. And when you're playing street hockey or, Bernie Perrant or whoever, you might be watching in those days, and you just having fun with it. But I always looked up to my dad and my brother because I just wanted to play hockey and be a goalie like them. Later on, those NHL aspirations start popping in, I think.
And so, you play local, then you play Fort Saskatchewan Traders, and then you go off to Portland. And what's the age that you go off to Portland to play with the Hawks?
I went to Fort Saskatchewan. I think I was 15, and I got called up to Portland. I think when I was 16, just for a couple games. They needed a goalie, and I played a couple. I was 16 to 17. I went up there, I think full time when I was 17. My first year, major junior. And that's when I started, when my brother played major junior, again, he's 7 years older, and I'm 10 or 12, probably 10. And I'm seeing, we're going to the games, and he was playing for the Calgary Centennials back then. And we go to games, and I see these guys, they're showing up in suits and ties, and they look like they're all shiny and pro. And so I thought, wow, those guys were my real heroes, even before thinking about the NHL. So then when I do go to Portland, I'm playing in the WHL, and I'm like, wow, this is I made it at least one step, and that's when I think I really started thinking, boy, the next thing is getting drafted, and getting drafted would be huge, and it was devastating for me because when you turn 18, you're eligible for the draft, And my 18-year-old year, I did not have a very good year in Portland. I was very homesick. Had a lot of, you know what I think, we'll talk about my mental health issues, but I think going back then, I just being that homesick and
Well, I was going to ask you. This is where I'm going with this because, there's no other sport that you really do this in. Okay, when you think of American football, when you think of baseball, when you think of basketball, young kids in Canada leave home at a young age.
yeah.
And I don't think people really understand the impact that can have on a person's life, a young person's life. Like, listen, it can be a tremendous experience, growing experience, and it also there's some detriment there. Yes or no? Like leaving home at such a young age.
Yeah, it's huge. And then you're on those buses, and you go on these road trips that are 2-3 weeks long, and you're living off the bus, and you're missing home. And then when you go home, you're not going home. You're going to your billet house well, for me, it was in Portland.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a big adjustment. And I don't think I think teams now realize, and they have more.
Support.
Support. I was going to say counseling, but support would probably be they realize now. Back when we were kids, it was like, hey, kid, get on the bus.
See you later.
Yeah, see ya. You're gone. And you might want to say goodbye to your parents. You ain't going to see them for a while.
Right.
And then you're gone. And the seasons were long. I think we played in junior back then. 72 games or something. That's a long season for minor hockey.
Yeah.
And my first year I missed the draft. I didn't get drafted. I was devastated. And so the next year I had a good year and I got drafted by Quebec. And finally you make another, and I don't have to tell you how that feels. You made another step, maybe towards your dream. And then you go to a training camp. But when I was 18, there was some young guys that got drafted, like Don Beaupre was in the NHL at 18.
Yeah.
Grant Fuhrer, and I'm looking at these guys, and I'm in junior, I'm the same age, and I'm like, wow, these guys are making it. And
so that gave you a little confidence that hey, shit, I played against these guys.
And of course, my like I said, that 18-year-old year was not good for me, but my second year, I had a good year. And so you start looking at these guys that are already in the NHL at your age.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, wow, I can maybe do this. I just need to get there.
Now, my draft year, 1978, was the last year of the 20-year-old draft. Okay, so I got drafted at the age of 20, and then 1980 was the first year of the 18-year-old draft. You were 81. You were drafted in 81. You didn't go the draft back then, no?
No.
Right? It's crazy, right? Like now it's like such a big spectacle, right? But back in the day, I always say it, I got a letter from the Montreal Canadiens 2 weeks later. I found out on the news I get drafted, and I got a letter in the mail 2 weeks later saying, we're inviting you to training camp. I was excited as hell.
You didn't get a phone call?
No. I was drafted. I was 231 out of 234. Matter of fact, one of your teammates was picked 2 spots after me, Louis Slager.
Yeah.
So, it's crazy how that works. So, and an 18-year-old kid, here you are putting all your eggs in one basket. You want to get the NHL, and you don't get drafted. That had to be, like you said, it was devastating for you. But on the flip side, you got back on your horse, and you make it happen the next year. You have a better season. So,
but it was different too. I waited by the phone for a phone call, hoping I'd get drafted, and it wasn't a cell phone. It wasn't a cell phone. So you were in the house. You were in the house. And,
the one with the long cord, you mean?
Yeah. But I did get a phone call. But that was kind of a crazy experience, because I wasn't sure if I'd even get drafted, because I missed the first round, the 18-year-old side. And maybe I'm just not that good. Maybe I'm not going to make it. And so getting drafted was huge. I think, anybody that gets drafted knows that feeling. But yeah, we did not go to the draft or anything like that.
Yeah, it's funny how it is today. It's a big production, like I said. But so you go off in your first year, your first training camp. You go to Quebec, and listen, you're Canadian. You grew up Grand Prairie around horses, right? You grew up on
Yep.
basically a ranch, right? And all of a sudden, you go from Portland. Now you leave home, you go to Portland. You're in the U.S. Now you get drafted by Quebec Nordiques. Is this a bit of a culture shock for you?
Oh,
When you
are you kidding
right?
me? It was my first training camp. It's Quebec City, and the Quebec Nordiques back then. They had a lot of French players. I mean,
Yeah.
they built their team around the French Canadians mostly, so everything was in French. And I remember going into our so-called fitness training, which wasn't very much back then, and I see this heavy set guy riding a stationary bike, and he's smoking a cigarette. And I thought it was a trainer maybe calibrating the bike for the test or something. And I remember asking, I think it was Michel Goulet. I said, "Hey, who's that guy?" And he goes, "That's Moose Dupont, our
Oh,
captain,
moose. The moose.
smoking a cigarette,
Oh,
doing a fitness test." They
uh,
didn't. He wasn't taking it very serious, obviously.
oh, God, that's so funny. It's funny you bring that up because when I was in Boston, right, Wes Walsh
Yep.
was the first pick. He was 18 years old, and we had all those fitness tests. We get the results back, and Mike Boyle, the conditioning guy, come in, and we're going to talk about the results. So we go through, how much guys bench, blah, blah, blah. We get to max VO2.
Yeah.
So he goes max VO2 on the team. Ray Bork, number one. Chris Nilan, number two. Goes through the whole team. And says where everybody is. Wes Walsh, number 24. He was the worst on the team.
And he was
He's
the first
18-year-old kid.
And he was the
Yeah.
first round pick.
Yeah. So this is the learning curve for the kid. So he goes, Mike said, "Any questions?" And Wes has got his hand up. He goes, "Mike, what? How can I? I'm 18 years old. How can I be last?" He said, "I get okay, Ray Bork, but Chris Nilan." He said the day we did the test, he came in. He had 3 cups of coffee and 3 cigarettes. He said, "How the hell do I end up 24 and he's number 2?" And Mike says, "But it's just not all how much you work out. And a lot of it's hereditary." He didn't get that, and it was just so funny. Like when you talk about the being naive as a young kid, he didn't have a clue.
Yeah.
But one of those tests. So you go to Quebec, you get in there, the culture shock part of it. You're trying to make this team. Was it difficult when you talk about all the French at the start? Because did they address the team in English basically, and then
Yeah, they did. But it was hard socially, because around the locker room it was mostly French. On the airplane, on the bus, it was mostly French. And you're a young guy, and you just keep your mouth shut, and you just going, "I wonder what they're saying. I wonder if they're talking about me." But yeah, But it's funny, back in the day when we were just starting, fitness testing was just beginning.
yeah,
And VO2, that was even that was new wave, man.
that was new.
I remember one time I'm on the rug in the locker room, and I'm stretching, and again Moose Dupont, he probably never seen anybody stretch in his life. And he goes, he looks down at me, he goes, "Hey kid, what you look, you lose a contact lens?"
The Moose.
Yeah.
What a nickname that is, Moose
Oh, yeah.
Dupont.
What
the
a great,
best.
that's what made it good. We had good leadership, because on that team, that first couple of years in Quebec, there were the English guys with Dale Hoganson, Dale Hunter, myself, maybe Mike Eagles. We were all kind of rookies, those guys. And then we had the Stastnys, and everything else was all French Canadian. So
Yeah.
it was a very, very tough
Yeah, it's different trying to acclimate to that. Even when I came in 79, 80 here in Montreal, there's quite a few French guys. And, you know, not being around the culture, understanding the culture, it's difficult at the beginning. You can't, it takes a while and then you start to pick up on things. So, you know, you go through, you play with the Nordiques, you were with Freddie for a bit, you're up and down, then you went to Wash, played in Wash, and then you go off to Buffalo. Now, during your young career as a junior and then into pros, did you ever like look inward and realize that there was something going on with you? That, you know, because suffering from OCD and, you know, you've had the issues with depression and stuff. Did you ever recognize that early in your life, or did you just think maybe that's
It's a good question.
I'm just trying to get where, like, did you know something was going on but you didn't have a name for it, I guess?
That's a good way of putting it. I think you more as a kid, where I struggled with anxiety and depression and undiagnosed OCD. I really struggled. And I would say when I got playing pro hockey, I just attributed it to anxiety because you're playing in the NHL. You know, you're a goalie, or you're
nervous before the game.
Nervous before the game. And I just thought maybe because I was a goalie, I feel it a little more than most players because, you know, the spotlight's on the goalie and the pressure and the goalie and all that. So I kind of just attributed it more to that. It's part of the position. And I'd read books about, you know, old goalies like Glenn Hall throwing up before every game. And, you know, Roger Crozier had stomach ulcers. And, you know, you read about it. And I just thought, you know, I picked a tough position that's going to cause a lot of mental anguish and anxiety. That's really what I thought.
Yeah. And so when you look back over those years and playing in the NHL and as far as support from the outside, there's not much. I mean, you know, like back in our era, it was, you know, suck it up, do the job, or you're fucking out of here, basically.
Well, the thing is, you do not want to think that you're mentally weak. You do not want to let them know that, man, I'm super nervous or I've got anxiety or
no, you got to hide all that.
You got to hide that because it would be looked upon as a weakness for sure. And of course, nowadays you got sports psychologists, team counselors, and things like that, which is awesome. But back in our era, no way. You kept that as hidden as you could. In fact, I had guys that would say, "Man, you're pretty normal for a goalie. You're too normal for a goalie." That's so good at hiding it.
Yeah,
it was because I was kind of like the locker room clown, joking around, all those things that you know, just to cover it up. I kind of went the extreme, and they thought, "Man, this kid's so easy going for a goalie." Man, if they could have took a zipper and looked inside they'd have seen a 3-ring circus with some elephants and giraffes walking around in there.
Because, and it's true, because even like in my case, you know, I couldn't show. I had to hide stuff. Like I had to hide when I was nervous going into Philly or Boston, knowing I'm going to fight maybe one or two of the 5 idiots that are out there that I may have to fight.
You know what I learned? You know what I learned? There's a great affinity between goalies and enforcers. And I didn't know this at the time, but I learned later on as I got older and more experienced that, you know, our anxiety, you know, is letting in a bad goal, having a bad game, losing the game for the team. Because as a goalie, you can do that very easily. Win the game or lose the game very easily, more than any other position. And I learned that enforcers had that same anxiety because all it took was, you know, one punch, and you're thinking the night before a game, oh, I got Dave Brown going into Philly or whoever, you know, whoever you're playing, you're going Bob Probert or, you know, in Detroit, you know, you're going, whew, man. And people, I realized that there's a big connection between goalies and enforcers as far as that mental, mental part. That I
And
mean,
I get that, and I think you could almost say that, and not about every player, but like let's say the goal scorers, right? If you're not scoring goals,
sure.
you know that anxiety and that pressure of you're not getting it done. I mean, we all have a different job at times out in the ice, and it certainly affects us differently. But
Yeah, but
I, I
it's all relative. But
yeah,
my point is, as a goalie, you're one bad goal away from me maybe being sent to the minors, and
right,
as an enforcer, you're one punch away from going to the minors or being knocked out of the
yeah,
league, out of hockey. Because you're not fighting lightweights. You're fighting guys that one punch could end your career.
yeah, for sure. So. I want to get on because we got to tackle a few things here today. But so you go to Buffalo, and not long in. I mean, you were there for what
Yeah.
six games. It was your sixth game.
Is that all?
You end up having a horrific accident. Playing against St. Louis, guy driving the net gets tied up with your D man. There's a collision, and when you look at that. And I know you have, and it's again sensitive. And I'm going to be sensitive to you and that whole thing. And I when I watched it again, I watched it again today, and I've seen it a few times. It never gets any easier to watch. One, and two, it's almost like it happens so fast you don't see it.
Yeah.
Like it's really hard to see. Even if you slow it down, it's almost impossible to see what happens. And so that happens, man. When I see you bending over there and holding your neck, like what is racing through your mind?
Well, and I think it's important.
If you don't mind,
No,
don't.
I've talked about this many times.
Right.
But I think it's important that people know that I prepared for death. Yes, there was immediate medical attention. I would have been dead had it not been a major sporting event. Had our trainer not been a Vietnam medic and seen this injury before.
Was that pizza?
Yes, it was.
Pizza.
And had it happened at the other end of the ice, I
Right.
probably wouldn't have made it. Being right, there was a lot of things that happened that allowed me to live. But to answer your question, I saw that amount of blood and I knew it was a major artery or and we all heard that if you cut you see in the movies, they slice the guy's neck and he's dead in 2 seconds, So that's what I thought was going to happen. I was going to die. And so I prepared for death, really. I thought, man, I only got a minute or two here, and I got a lot of repenting to do. I don't have enough time here. and then I asked one trainer. They got me into the locker room, and I asked the trainer one guy was holding my hand, Rip, and I said, call my mom, tell her I love her. There was a team chaplain who wasn't at that game, and like you said,
Did you ask for him?
Oh yeah, I was prepared. I did. I asked for him.
Now, why was that? I gotta ask you, why was that? Were you religious at all growing up?
I've always been spiritual and I believe in God. So cool. I thought, man, I got a lot of repenting and I was just trying to stay awake because I thought if I passed out, I'm never waking up. I'm going to die. So there was the short answer is I prepared for death mentally, 100%. And we'll talk about, I'm sure, what trauma can do because I had no idea because I came back in 10 days and a lot of people go, wow, but
like we're supposed to do.
Right. We don't have these big contracts and that was a contract year for me too. So I was like, holy smokes. So I came back, I was weak, loss of blood. But the thing is, coming back as quick as I did, I really became kind of a cult hero in Buffalo. They supported me, embraced me, and they thought I was this big, courageous, tough guy that, could, wow, he just loves the game and wants to help.
Yeah.
And there was more to it, obviously, contract and things like that. But I had to prove to people, the media, the coaches, the GM, that I could, because everybody was saying he'll never come back. If he does, he'll never be the same goalie, and on and on and on. And I also had to prove to myself, that, I can get back in there and not have, it affect me. So, it was, I had so much support from Buffalo fans and the team and teammates coming back the way I did. But it was the next year, Knuckles, that I really struggled. It all that adrenaline had worn off, and now I'm back, and I'm a regular player again. And I really started to struggle with obsessive compulsive disorder. It was hard for me to leave the house, depression, anxiety, and I was starting to have flashbacks where I couldn't sleep. I would see the skate come up, and it was real as real. And I would sit up in bed, just, grabbing my neck. And that's how real it was. I was reliving it. And now we know what that is. It's called PTSD. But at the time, I didn't tell anybody.
No.
I didn't tell anybody, because I had to prove.
Suck it up. Suck it up.
Well, I had a lot to prove,
Well, I was looking at your record that next year. I mean, you had 14, 11, and 2. You had a .903 save percentage. Like, hello.
Well,
they were good numbers.
Not bad.
Not bad. Yeah, but they're not bad numbers. Like, and all the time you're really putting those numbers up, you were really struggling.
Really struggling. Yeah.
Now, how long does that go on for? Does that go from that season into the next to the next? Yeah. So you suck it up for basically 3 years. How do you? Well, I have an idea, but I'm going to ask you. How do you medicate? You medicate yourself. How do you handle this? How do you live with this and do what you're doing for 3 years?
Well, it got to the point where I couldn't sleep, and because of the flashbacks and the nightmares. So I'd sit in a chair, just like a chair like I'm sitting in now, and just kind of nod off like you do on an airplane, just to avoid that deep sleep where you're going to have that nightmare. And so I hadn't slept very well. I've been sleeping like that for about 10 or 12 days. And we had a Super Bowl party at Pat LaFontaine's house, our captain. And I'm really struggling now. And I remember going home. I didn't stay there long because, I'm not doing good. And I had a broken thumb that I was playing with. I had some painkillers, but I wasn't taking them. And I looked at it and said, do not drink with alcohol, will make you drowsy. I thought, I got to sleep, man, but I don't want the nightmare. So I took a few of those painkillers and then drained a bottle of scotch. And I wasn't a drinker yet. So my heart stopped, and I ended up in the hospital. And of course, they think it might be a suicide attempt, and it wasn't.
Yeah,
that comes later.
Yeah,
But I remember the psychiatrist asking me, all this stuff, and that's where I told him. I told him all my symptoms. I can't sleep. I had flashbacks. My OCD, which was undiagnosed. I said I can't.
So how did they find it? Did you find out you were OCD during this time? Is that the first time you got a name on it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That was the very first time. Depression, anxiety, OCD, and then obviously and PTSD was not a set of words back then. So I was never diagnosed with trauma or anything like that. Just that I had their main focus was the anxiety and PTSD, or the
OCD.
OCD, yeah.
So this all gets addressed. You come back and play. So do you start to get some help? Do you start to heal?
No,
what goes on there? You still got to play hockey.
But I'm on different medications, different doctors, and nothing is working. And my play is getting really bad. It's getting terrible. They even put me on a drug called Haldol, which is highly, highly sedative. And why would you put an NHL goalie that relies on reflexes on a sedative?
You work for the other team.
Yeah, exactly. So I get sent to the minors, and my first game in the minors, I let in 4 goals on 6 shots in the first period, got pulled, and I'm devastated. I can't even stop a puck in the minors. So I went into our coach at the end of the game, Rick Dudley, and I said, "This is in San Diego."
Who's a great guy too, right? Duds,
the best. He's flown. Well, we can talk about that later, but Yeah, so Rick says, "We'll get you help. We'll get you help." And I'm like, "Rick, I've been 3 years of different doctors and everything." So, anyways, they do get me into this doctor, and he happens to be the leading. So the point is kind of a god shot. Yeah, my NHL career, I'm devastated. I go to the minors, but I get to see the leading doctor in OCD in the world because I'm sent to that city in San Diego. So there was kind of a blessing in disguise there, and that's where he put me on a medication in 6 weeks, man. I was like, is this what it feels like to be normal? And
Right.
I got
So
back,
does all that, like being obsessive compulsive, like some of the things you did before a game.
which we do.
Yeah, yeah, but was some of those obsessive compulsive things?
No, no,
No.
my obsessions was in my head. It was
Okay.
not. It wasn't hockey. The stress of hockey would bring up more obsessive. Stress brings on your OCD symptoms. But my obsession was not with the hockey. It was other thoughts, ruminating thoughts, like contamination, other things like that.
Yeah.
I went through a whole gamut of different things. But I got back, I got playing, then I got into coaching, and I did great. I did great for about 14 years on that medication.
So, and I'm asking about the medication because I had someone on here who suffered from the same, and they said a lot of times they be in the airport with the team, waiting to get on the plane, and they have to be the last one. And when the team all got on the plane, he went around and picked up their garbage and put it in the trash
Yeah,
afterwards.
yeah, that's it.
So in that case, and I'm asking because did you have anything like that? Because I'm wondering, would the medication have stopped him from doing something like that?
I
That
would think
medication?
it would have helped them, probably the medication and maybe some therapy, like
Yeah,
exposure therapy, things like that,
yeah,
which I have done. Yeah, I mean, all my obsessive stuff pretty much went away.
yeah,
My depression, like I didn't know I was so depressed.
yeah.
Um, when I remember on week 6 going to the doctor to get my weekly checkup, and I'm driving, and I'm in Southern California, and I'm like, wow, the weather's great here, palm trees, and I'm rolling down my window, and I mean, that's how I didn't even know how d- depressed I was until I felt good because I had no gauge of what normal was.
Yeah.
Well, I've been like that, probably my whole life to certain degrees. And but then once I got on that medication, and the next thing you know, I'm coaching in the NHL, and I'm bouncing around different teams. And I thought if I just take that medication, I'll be fine. But over time, and I didn't check in with my psychiatrist because, as you know, when you have a team physician, team doctor, you just get a renewal on a prescription,
Yeah.
And so I wasn't doing anything with my psychiatrist in San Diego. I wasn't even calling him. So over 14 years, 15 years, my body was getting immune to the medicine. And then Richard Zednick happened, and he cut his jugular vein.
Yeah.
And I was coaching with Columbus. I'm very media accessible, so they're asking me all the questions. You were the first, and what was it like, and what should he do, and
Da da da. Yeah.
and I didn't know I had PT. I had not been diagnosed with PTSD yet, so I was like, holy. So in my mind, I'm telling the story over and over, reliving and probably feeling the emotions, but not really feeling them.
Yeah.
And that's when I started to nosedive, and I started to self-medicate. I started to drink to calm my demons, I guess you would call them.
Now
Um,
that's after you retired from playing the game. You're
yes,
coaching now.
I'm coaching now.
You're
Yeah,
coaching now.
yeah.
And so you're self medicating. And how does this now how does this all come to a head? And when is it that you're no longer coaching and you're back on your ranch in Reno or in
Well,
Nevada?
I was back then. They had a few full-time goalie coaches, but most of us were consultants. We go in for
Okay.
2 weeks and we come out for 2 weeks. So I was with Columbus, and I was at home on a 2 week, away from the team, and I'm not doing good. I'm drinking a lot, and I'm really going down that rabbit hole. And I remember I wasn't sleeping again, and I'm just drinking, and I'm
Yeah.
just going through it. And my wife came home about 2:30 in the afternoon. I'd been up all night, and I'm behind the barn, and I'm shooting targets. And
Is that Joni?
yes, and then she came home, and she sees me. I'm sweating, and I'm probably stinking. There's beer cans everywhere, and I'm shooting guns. And she goes, "What is going on with you?" And I said, "You don't know what it's like to live in this head. I just wish I could turn it off." And I turned the gun under my chin, under my neck here, and pulled the trigger. And I didn't know if there was a bullet in it or not. And when it went off, I was like, "Holy shit. I just shot myself." So it wasn't like I premeditated suicide. Yes, I had suicidal thoughts. I just, a lot of people that die by suicide, and I think this is important for people to hear, and a lot of it's listed as an overdose. I think people they get into that cycle. They self-medicate, whether with its alcohol or drugs, and they're just trying to get through a fucking day. They're
Yeah.
just trying to get through a day, and that's where I was. And you get to the point where I didn't care if I drank myself to death. I didn't care if I was using drugs. I probably wouldn't care if I overdosed. That's the kind of where your head is at.
Yeah.
Not really suicidal, but not giving a
Yeah.
shit.
You don't give a shit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
life ain't good,
Yeah.
and you wish it would be better, but it's not. And that began me surviving that gunshot. Um, uh, Changed my life. That's where I went for. Well, first of all, I was in a coma. They put me in a coma. I never lost consciousness. The bullet lodged in my skull.
Yeah. Well, for a second, if I can, you said you didn't know there's a bullet in the gun. Is that
Right.
because you had been shooting and you
Yeah,
just fit?
yeah.
Well.
Yeah,
Now, was it a clip of so many bullets? Or
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you weren't sure of that, and apparently, when the police come, you try to pass it off as an accident, right?
Well, this is that hockey mentality. I'm
Yeah.
thinking if they think it's a suicide attempt, I'm never going to get a job in the NHL again. I'll get fired and I'll never get a job.
Yeah.
This guy's crazy.
Yeah.
So I told Joni, I
And you
said,
wonder why people don't,
yeah,
the
yeah,
stigma, right?
right. Especially,
No one wants to touch you then. You're like, oh, he's fucking gone. So
yeah,
forget about it.
you
Right?
you're crazy to be a goalie, they say anyways. And then you do
Yeah.
that. And then, so I told Joni, I said, tell the cops that I was going through a fence and the gun kind of went off.
Boom.
And so, she did. She told him, and then one of the cops. I had a history in town because I was acting out. I was getting in fights. I was acting. I had there's a radar out there on me.
Yeah.
And so they went to Joni and said, "Look, we know this was not an accident, and if you list it as a suicide attempt, we can keep him in the hospital. He cannot just walk
We can
out.
get him some help.
If you let him say it's an accident, as soon as he's healthy physically, he can walk out." So she changed the statement to suicide.
God bless her.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. Oh, I was pissed at her at first.
I'm sure,
Oh, yeah,
right?
I was really mad,
Yeah.
And so then I go to a treatment center for 6 months, and they're trying to tell me I got PTSD, and I'm denying it. I claimed everything: anxiety, depression, OCD, all that, alcohol. I claimed all that, but now they're trying to tell me I got PTSD, and I'm like, no.
Yeah.
And they finally convinced me after about 2 months that I had, there's a story behind that, but we don't have enough time, how I got to acceptance of the PTSD.
Yeah.
And once I accepted it and started doing what I'm supposed to do with PTSD, I started to get better. And so the last 4 months of treatment were very successful. I progressed and eventually was released.
Yeah. Well, that was a good stay for you. Thank God Joni did tell them. And even though you were pissed, the best thing for you, apparently. And that stigma, and I get it because I was there too. I didn't give a fuck. I was addicted to drugs. I didn't give a shit. If I did, I might have caught this earlier. I actually, when I was messed up, and I was addicted to drugs, and I ended up going down that rabbit hole I was in. I'm being totally honest. I knew nothing about drug and alcohol treatment. I knew nothing about, I can go somewhere and get help.
Yeah.
I'm not saying if I did, I would,
Right.
but I didn't know anything about it. And I was made aware through an intervention one-on-one with one of the guys from the National Hockey League Behavioral Health Program, Dan Cronin, who
Yeah,
is just a friggin' incredible guy. And really, he's the guy who got my attention. He's the guy who got me to go see a therapist that eventually broke me down and had me on the floor in a ball crying like a little baby. I was the jig was up. I couldn't do it anymore. But I kept plowing through. I didn't want people knew I was messed up, but I couldn't admit to myself I was. It was so hard.
Do you know how important that statement is for people to hear? That Chris Nilan, your reputation precedes itself, and you're curled up on the floor crying like a baby. Like people think that this disorder, addiction, and mental illness is they're alone or that they're weak.
Yeah.
Now we're talking to a pretty tough dude in Chris Nilan. He just made a pretty broad statement, so anybody listening can go, "Wow, this is not a weakness. This is a sickness."
No, it's not at all. It takes listen, when you get broken down like that, when you start really looking inward and you realize where you've got in your life and the heaviness of the emotion when at that moment, like it's time to get honest. And when you do, and you like that crying, some of it was guilt based, some of it was shame, and certainly
confusion.
But a big part of it, there was relief there.
Yeah,
because I admitted something that I never wanted to, and I did, and it actually, that was the beginning
of the healing
of the healing process for me. And people don't realize that it's not a weakness at all, and it's just, it's that stigma that you are weak and there's something wrong with you, and we're not going to hire you, and we don't want to be around you because you're fucking out of your mind, and No, it's not that at all.
Do you attribute any of that stuff? And I know you don't know for sure, neither do I, but I have a pretty good idea with me. How much concussion issues would have caused some of this?
It's hard for me to really tell. I had Bob Probert's wife on, Danny, and she talked to me about that Boston University CTE concussion study, and said that and Bob was found to have severe CTE. And she actually prodded me and got me to go into that program. I've been in the program. I've been in for 2 years now. And came to the number of concussions I had at about 14. Now, my definition of a concussion
is way different.
So I'm thinking maybe I had 2.
You probably had 20.
So, and I can remember the first one. It was my first year. Fred Barrett, I tried to dipsy do him, go inside, and he didn't even really hit me. He just stepped up. He wasn't trying to hurt me, and his shoulder got me in the jaw, and I had that little separation here, and I was like, the first time I was ever knocked dizzy like that on the ice. And I got back to the bench. I had a tough time. I actually wanted to fight him. If it wasn't for a teammate, I probably would end up getting it worse.
Yeah.
So I had that. I gathered myself. I woke up the next day. I slept okay that night. I woke up the next day. I had no symptoms. So I'm thinking, well, all right, I got dinged. That's it, dinged. So if that was a concussion, okay, I get it. And then I hit the ice once in a fight, and I saw stars like crazy, but I wasn't knocked out. concussion. But after that, all the instances that I brought up and could remember, they deemed those also concussions, and I was shocked. I'm like,
well, once you get one, you're more susceptible. It doesn't take as much impact.
yeah,
It's a bruise that's not going to heal, and every time you get hit, you're re-bruising, and so you're re-injuring your brain. Yeah, it's a progressive deal. Once you get that first one, it's a lot easier to keep getting them.
Yeah, I'm glad I went in the program, and I did. Yeah, they do a lot of neurological testing. They do brain teaser stuff. It was really they took spinal fluid from my spine, and they draw it out, and they test for 23 different proteins that are consistent with CTE, dementia, and Alzheimer's. So they test that. You can't find the results if you have those proteins because it's a study.
Right.
They're not diagnosing you. But what they do is they let you know where you are cognitively for someone your age.
Okay.
And actually, the doctor was very surprised where I was cognitively for someone my age. So that for me was somewhat, was liberating in a sense because I think if I had all them concussions, I got damage. And who knows? I mean, it could get me later. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I know right now where I'm at, and I feel comfortable with it. And who knows? Like my mother had dementia. Is it hereditary? Is it the way we live our lives? Is it a combination? Who knows? So, it was something to really to be involved in. It was great for me to understand it, and now, and I don't sit and think every day, oh my God, is that going to happen to me? I don't, but it's nice to know there's some comfort there in knowing that, okay, I'm all right where I'm at. Yeah, there's nothing going on bad right now that I know of and they know of. So it is comforting in a sense. We talk about that stigma, and so many people in the world, everybody suffers from mental illness. Doesn't matter what, occupation you have.
I don't know if we can all be.
Not everybody, but people in the world of every occupation, every profession, whatever, all different people suffer from mental illness doesn't matter. It doesn't, what I'm saying, it doesn't discriminate.
Yeah, it doesn't discriminate, age, job, race, anything like that. I know what you're saying, but some people, because of the stigma, they may be struggling with anxiety or depression, but they don't want, because of the stigma, to go get diagnosed. But a lot of it is not mental illness; it's emotional sickness. And emotional sickness, we all get divorce or lose loved ones, or things happen that we get emotionally distressed, which can cause depression, which can cause anxiety, which can cause some things, but it's not clinical mental illness. But a lot of people, if you think about it, if you think, well, I'm not mentally ill, I don't know how to relate to these people. Well, just think about maybe sometime in your life when you were depressed because of something that happened in your life. And that's kind of, then multiply it by 100.
Yeah. Well, here's an instance for you, what's happened to me. And I'm so glad it happened, because I'm going to tell you right now, in my lifetime, I've never suffered from depression. Listen, have I been sad? Yeah, losing someone, my dog devastated, my mom, my father, all, people close to us. So I get that. That's genuine emotional sadness. Yeah. You get it. But when I had a disease called polymyalgia rheumatica, and it attacks all your joints. Your joints go stiff and they go on fire. It's similar to arthritis, a real severe arthritis. Now, I didn't know what the hell was going on with me. I went to a rheumatologist. They put me on prednisone. It took the symptoms away. I couldn't even get out of bed with it. I'm telling you. I was like, I thought this was the game catching up to me.
Was it the pain?
Yeah, the pain and the stiffness. Like, it was crazy. My joints were on. It's like kind of like rheumatoid arthritis.
Yeah.
Like really bad. And I got on the prednisone. So I blew up. I was like 240 pounds. Yeah, I'm like, what the hell? Finally, I'm able to get off it. So they start to wean me down. I wean myself down, and I get off it too fast because I just wanted to stop taking it.
Yeah.
Get this, I don't want to take any more medication. Well, I came off too fast, and that's one of the things they warned. If you come too fast, you come down too fast, you can suffer from depression. It'll cause depression. So I'm telling you, I'm sitting there one day, and Jamie walked in, and she'd been looking at, kind of checking me out. And she's looking at me. She goes, "Are you okay?" And instead of hiding it, and thank God, because I've been through therapy and I've gotten honest with myself, I said, "Actually, I'm not." And she said, "I know you've been like it." I said, "I'm depressed. I don't know what the hell this is." And man, I got back on the medication and I came down properly, but I had it for like 3 days. And I'm so glad I had it because
I know what you're saying.
I never suffered from that. And when people say, "Oh, I'm depressed," our first thought, someone who's healthy and someone, snap out of it. Come on, And I just, and not that I thought that way, but I couldn't equate it with anything. And I finally was able to because of that. And I'm so glad it happened to me. Well, and to live with that, right?
Yeah, that's kind of sometimes, when I was at my worst, and this is kind of going off what you just described. I wish that everybody could live one day with depression or OCD or
any of it
or severe anxiety, just one day, just so that the world can have a little go, "Oh my God, these people are hurting." I mean, you and I are pretty tough guys, and for us to say, "Man, this is one of the worst feelings in the world," that's how painful it is. I've said this, and people go, "What?" I've said this in an interview. I said, I'd rather have my throat cut 100 times over again than be mentally ill.
Yeah,
that's a big statement.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah,
that's a huge statement.
Yeah.
Thank God for Joni. You go and you get help and you come out, and how do things coming back out of treatment go for you when you get out and start getting back into the actions of life?
Well, all of a sudden you got all this gratefulness. You're just like, and I, being, self-medicating. You get into the AA program, and you just start learning how to live again with. And I'm not because now I'm diagnosed with PTSD, and there's no cure for PTSD, so I have to do all these educational things. I've gone on 2 retreats with first responders and military veterans, and I've got all these tools. And it's like, you get tools going to AA. Like if you crave a drink. So I'm learning how to live with my illness, with my addiction, with all these things, which was and you used the word liberating. It was. It's like, whoa, I mean, I can live, function, and be happy. Yeah, I'm going to have bad days, but when I do have a bad day, I don't have to go drink. I don't have to, self-medicate over it. I've got tools. So it's been a journey. I mean, for sure. And I still, like recently I've gone through a bad episode of some stuff, and, I'm proactive. I instead of just, I recognize it, and instead of going, "Oh, don't, push through it, don't be weak." It's not a weakness. It's a sickness. So I'm proactive, and I get the help that I need and do the things that I need to do, so.
Well, good for you to address those things. It's getting honest and being honest with yourself in the end.
And that's hard.
Yeah. You can't be honest with yourself. You can't be honest with anybody else. You lie to yourself first before you lie to anybody else.
Right. Well, understandably, because of the stigma,
Yeah.
we maybe want to tell somebody, or we want to
Yeah.
admit it, but because of the stigma with addiction, with mental illness, it's perceived as a weakness. So then you're going to go, well, I'm not weak. I'm going to push through. I'm not going to tell anybody because I'll be perceived as weak.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're getting better getting rid of the stigma, and that's what you guys like you and I are trying to do, is help
Yeah.
people and help people, and just this podcast in itself. I guarantee you, there's going to be more than one person that's going to go, holy crap! I just heard this stuff.
Right.
Whoa! I might be able to go talk to somebody or get help or see a doctor or whatever.
Well, it's when we get out of ourselves and look to help others instead of always looking
Yeah,
inward and I got to do this,
be a
me, I got to take
service.
care of this, to
Yeah.
be a service and help other people. It's such a great feeling. Again, to be able to help others, and I know through my journey, since I've changed my life, I've had the opportunity to help other people and get on that path.
Well,
And
I
and
always
and
I always say God spared me for those that are still suffering.
uh,
I should be dead 3 times.
yeah,
Once with the jugular vein, once with the medication and the scotch, and once with a bullet, in my head.
right.
So I'm like, I'm here for a reason, and I better wake up and try to help people. And like I said, just talking about it right here, you and I, it tells people that, wow, I can get help.
Yeah. So in helping people, and again, it's an awesome thing to do. And often, you see people who get well that they dive in too quick and they do too much, and
Yeah,
it ends up setting them back.
yeah.
So you got to
I've
find
done
that
that.
happy medium, right?
I've done that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And we all, I know I have too. And you got to be able to recognize the time and to be available for others, but you also
Right.
have to set some boundaries. That being said, um, you know, you and Tony Granado both asked me to come on and be part of the ranch, and I want to talk about the ranch, Teammates for Life, out in Minnesota. It certainly all this was brought on. I believe just this is before I knew anything about the ranch. When Mark Pavelich, who ended up taking his own life, former New York Ranger, played in the U.S. Olympic team when they won that gold medal, and Barry Beck came out and had some words to say about it. He felt that we left the hockey community, being we, had left Mark Pavelich behind. Do you think he was left behind?
No, in some ways, yes, in some ways, but I think that and that's what all started the ranch, was Mark's inspiration. Mark was struggling. Um, he was very close with Barry Beck. Mark had some mental health issues. He was in a mental health facility, a lockdown state facility in Minnesota. His sister contacted me, and Barry contacted me and said, we know your story. Can you help us? And I happen to know somebody in Minnesota that had a facility, mostly for veterans with PTSD and that. So I talked to Mark's lawyer, and he was facing some criminal stuff, because of his mental illness. He got in a
Yeah.
little bit of trouble, and he was facing some things. So I talked to his lawyer, I talked to the DA, and was able to get him brought into a facility in Minnesota, which I was connected with through some veterans. And
Is that the Eagles Healing Nest? Yep.
it's Eagles Healing Nest.
Yep.
And from there, we got Mark out of the mental health facility into this facility, and he was so grateful that he wasn't, locked in this place. It's on 120 acres now, and he's got freedom. He loves to fish. He loves the outdoors. Played the guitar and all that stuff. So, he was happy. unfortunately, he ended up dying by suicide. And this is the terrifying, sad part of it. He was afraid he was going to go to prison because of these legal issues.
Yeah.
And they weren't. Trust me, folks, it wasn't a horrific crime or anything. But um, anyways, it wasn't a day or two later he was absolved of all the um, uh, it,
Charges.
charges.
Yeah.
But he took his life because he was afraid to go to prison, and he didn't think he could live that way in prison.
So sad.
So sad.
Right.
So the inspiration started there. Mark loved that place so much that I think him and Barry started talking about, hey, we need a place for like where people like Mark could go, where hockey players can go, not just hockey players, any athlete or families. I mean, now that we've started the ranch, we've had daughters and sons of hockey players. We've had wives. We've had players. Um, and the great part of it is we are in conjunction with the Eagles Healing Nest. So you got
Yeah.
like 70 veterans there that have lived life, have struggled mightily, and are healing there. And they are very big in helping the ranch community, the Ranch Teammates for Life community, guidance, peer support, things like that. So it's ended up just being a very dynamic, a great healing place. I know there's a couple situations where I've gotten a phone call months after the person was released and saying, man, thank you. It changed my life. It got my feet under me, whatever words they used. But so everybody that we have had there, we've invited them there. We encourage them to stay for a month, but they don't have to.
Yeah.
And I think just about everybody stayed voluntarily for about 3 months.
Yeah.
Darn near every one of them. So that tells me we're doing something right, because I know when I was in rehab, man, I couldn't wait to get out. I was,
Yeah.
it was hell, as you know.
I went twice. I went twice for 3 months, and each time I wanted to get out.
Yeah.
I remember the second time, I felt a little bit better with staying there, but I needed to be there for that
Right.
time. I really did. I didn't need, come in for a month, see you later, you're gone. I needed that time, and it really helped me to build a base to give me those tools I needed when I get out to the outside on how to live one day at a time without drugs, alcohol, or any of that nonsense. And
Right.
it helped me that way. And when we talk about the ranch, I mean, they have group therapy, individual therapy.
Right.
They do
Peer support.
peer support. They also introduce AA and NA stuff, right?
Yeah.
The programs, the fellowship.
We have yoga. We have music. We have a music studio. There's yoga, equine therapy. People with horses, but a lot of it's the peer support, and that's where the veterans, I think, are very helpful with us, because, like I said, they get it more than anybody. They
Right.
understand it. But we got Barry Beck's on the board. Barry and his Mark's sister, and
Yeah.
we were kind of the co-founders. I'm the president. You're on the board. We got Tony Granato on the board. TJ Gorance on the board. Those are the hockey guys, and then we got our board is phenomenal because we're all from different walks of life. And we got the hockey guys, but we've got some great. Ron Tomasomi, who was a coach at Harvard,
Yeah.
he's been phenomenal with us. I mean, we've got we got somebody. We've got a lawyer that's volunteering. We've got and we're all volunteers.
Yeah.
We've got one paid employee who's our on-site director. And so we run strictly off donations and fundraisers, our annual golf tournament and that. So, we're not we're trying to get some grants, but that takes time.
Yeah.
But I just can't. I'm very proud. I don't want to say skeptical, but it's a lot of work. And I thought, man, I don't know if we can. But our board and our volunteers, which we all are, have been so hardworking, and we've made it happen and we've made it work. But I just thought with my skepticism when I started, is this working? And then, like I said, everybody that has come there has stayed voluntarily for, more than a month,
Yeah.
usually 3 or 4 months. I know a couple people actually have stayed 8 months, and that's all voluntarily. They just want to
Yeah.
heal. They want to get better. Uh, they want the support. They want the love that we can give them. And so now I'm looking and going, man, this is working. We are helping people. It's needed. It's needed. And we've got the concussion issues, the brain trauma, the TBI, traumatic brain injuries. We've got the mental illness, the addiction side. We've got a lot of things in not just the hockey, but in society that we're trying to, help people and heal people.
When certainly I was just named to the board last month, and I'm gonna learn as I go here, and I know I can be of some help. We talk about donations and stuff like that. Uh, you know, has the NHL at all shown any interest or possibility, the alumni, any in helping out the ranch?
We are talking, and yes, we're making steps towards that. The PA and the Alumni Association.
Yeah,
Um, and there was a situation, and I know you know the situation very well, where there was a player that had not played. Like, if you play one game in the NHL, you're automatically covered. If you're struggling as a retired player or whatever, you have one game in the NHL, they're going to take care of you. You're going to get sent to rehab. It'll be paid for. It'll all be done. Well, we had a
yeah,
situation where we had a minor league player who had not played a game in the NHL, and he needed help. And as you know the rest of the story. They were calling us
yeah,
um, to try and see if we could help this hockey player.
yeah, yeah. So,
So it's not just NHL guys, right? We
yeah,
minor league guys and the college guys, the junior kids. I mean,
just hockey players,
hockey
right?
players. And,
That,
and,
yeah,
and to tell you the truth, it's not just the players; it's the family of the players too.
yeah.
Yeah.
And now, soldiers also in that group, or is it going to be just hockey players at the ranch? And
Well,
do
when
veterans go to the Eagle's Nest? Is that it,
yes,
or is there a difference?
veterans are at the Eagle's Nest, and if they have an overflow or need extra rooms or beds, they come into the ranch. We work in conjunction with them.
That's awesome.
They've been terrific. I mean, they donated the building to us. We
Yeah,
we obviously had to renovate it, and it needed hundreds of thousands of dollars of renovations because it's an old building. But we did it. We got it done. And so we work in conjunction. The veterans are a big part of our community at the ranch, and that mentality to be a soldier. It's not much different than to be an athlete.
yeah, yeah, for sure. That team concept is big. So if people want to give to the ranch, how can they go about giving to the ranch and help support this endeavor?
Just go on our website, the ranch Teammates for Life, and there's a donate button, and you can go right there. I think that'd be probably the easiest way. We have if you get on our webpage, there's other ways of donating. You can buy a brick. We've got all sorts of little other ways that people can contribute. But just go to our website, the Ranch Teammates for Life, and you can find everything there.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's awesome to be able to help other people. And again, you look at, I know the National Hockey League. When I went through the issues I had, that there was a hand there for me to reach out for. I had to find my way a little bit, and they were certainly there to help me. Which,
Right.
I
But
I I
what's
have
sad,
enough bad things to say about the league as far as the refereeing, all the other nonsense that we analyze and talk about on a daily basis. But certainly, I'm glad they were there for me, and they were, and I'm in. I won't say I'm indebted to them, but I'm grateful that
right? But we
they
also we
they
also
gave me that opportunity.
we also got to take care of our minor league players,
Yeah.
our university, our junior players,
And I truly believe that too.
And that's where we come in, because if you don't have that one NHL game,
Yeah.
you're shit out of luck. So
Those guys get left behind. They do. Again, you look at the minor league players associations, right? They're not near as strong. The money isn't as much, and those players, they battle. They chase that dream for so many years, and then, hockey's over, and they go through the same things that NHL guys do when they retire, and they suffer from the same issues.
Well,
right?
you know what else is cool about us is that we and a board we voted on this recently because we weren't charging anything, and we were having a hard time. I mean, we got to keep the lights on.
Yeah, for sure.
So rehabs and treatment centers are, probably at the least $20,000 a month, and so
easily.
We're right around $1,000 a month just to cover the food and the gas and the electricity of keeping our place going. And that's why donations are so huge for us, because we don't charge $20,000 a month or $30,000 a month. So we're trying to help. And really, can somebody in a minor hockey league, guy that played in the minors or in university or junior, afford that? No, they can't pay $20,000 a month.
Yeah.
I mean, and
impossible.
Who's going to pay for it?
Yeah, and some they don't have the insurance, right? It's
Right.
not. It's they have nowhere to go. A lot of them. And that's tough stuff, and that's awesome. The ranch is providing those services and offers those people a place to go. There's no question about it. So yeah, Clint, awesome stuff, and I look forward, obviously, to working with you. And if there's anything we can ever do going forward, as far as the podcast and the ranch, if there's any way I can help beyond being on the board.
No, you we have a board meeting tomorrow.
Yeah, at 10. Yeah, I will be there. My first one. And
so it's 10 Central, I think. So 11 your time.
Oh, it's 11 my time. Okay.
I believe. I believe that's 10 Central.
Okay.
Pretty sure.
Cool.
Check your email; it'll tell you.
All right.
Maybe get Jamie to read you the email.
Yeah. Oh. I thought it was 10 a.m. Eastern. Okay, I'll check that out.
Yeah.
Listen, we'll talk tomorrow. Thank you so much for the insights today. You're a good man. I love that you're still here with us.
Well,
I'm so glad you failed 3 times.
Yeah, no kidding, right? Likewise, buddy. We'll see you tomorrow.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Raw Knuckles with Chris Nilan on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.